In this tutorial, we are going to discuss the process tool called work plans and how to write a work plan. When you click to add or edit a process, you'll find the work plan process tool in the process tool stack on the left side of the screen. It is the first option listed. Every process needs a work plan. That is almost always where you will start the systems writing process. So I'm going to log into my TouchStone account. And let's say in this example that you want to create a process for making coffee. I just want to keep it very simple. You're going to create a process for making coffee. My first question is, where does this process live? In which of the four key functions? Is it a sales process? Is it a client fulfillment process? Is it an administrative sort of back office behind the scenes process? Is it a management leadership process? I'm going to say it's definitely a behind the scenes administrative process. So I'm going to select and click on running the business. I'm going to come up to add a new process, and I'm going to put in the title making coffee. And I'm going to put this in my administrative section. I'm going to click on the process, and the first thing I want to do is write an objective. So I will click on the word objective. The objective is a 1 or 2 sentence response to the question, what is the purpose of this system? And it appears underneath the system name on the job description. So I'm going to highlight the word objective because I want to get that out of there. And I'm going to answer the question, what is the purpose for a process for making coffee? And I'm going to write something like, making coffee every morning for the office. This is very obvious, but it's just an important step because when you are writing processes, you will enter a process name that if you haven't written an objective, you will forget what you were thinking about when you wrote that process name, and it will just no longer make sense to you. So while this is a very simple process, making coffee, make coffee every morning for the office, I'm going to click Save. And now I'm going to come over to the work plan. And when I'm writing a process, I always begin by creating a work plan title that is exactly the same as the process name. So in this case, I'm going to create a work plan called Making Coffee. And I'm not going to bother putting in an objective because I already wrote the objective for the process. I don't know that I need to write an objective at this point. But you will see in a moment where an objective would be necessary. But at this point, I'm just going to create the work plan. And I'm going to add a task. The first step is to fill the carafe with water. Add task. Grind coffee beans. Add task. Put coffee filter in coffee machine. Add task. Put coffee grounds on top of coffee filter. Add task. And save. So there you have it. I've written a process and it turns out to be 5 steps. I fill the coffee carafe with water. I grind the coffee beans. I put the coffee filter in the coffee machine. I put the coffee grounds on top of the coffee filter and I turn the coffee machine on. So that is all there is to writing a work plan. However, one thing I want to point out is that when I wrote the work plan, you'll notice that each of the steps in the process is a new task. So I kept saying add task, add task, add task. A second thing that I'd like to point out is that each task begins with a verb. It is an action sentence. So that is a best case practice for writing a work plan. Every step gets its own task and begin the task with a verb, which makes it an active sentence. When you're finished writing the process, you might ask yourself, are there any expectations I have? You'll notice that on a work plan, there are both tasks and expectations. If there is an expectation for the entire system, I would put that here. So for example, I might have an expectation that the first person in the morning makes coffee. Open this up, I would say add expectation, and I would put in here, the first employee to arrive at the office will start the first part of coffee. I might have a second expectation the employee who finishes the coffee will start a new pot. So in other words, when the coffee runs out, the person who's responsible for finishing that last cup of coffee from the machine will start a new pot. I also might want someone to always use cold water. So in that instance, I have an expectation that is relevant to a specific task in the system. You're welcome to put the all expectations in the expectations section, but what I like to do when there is an expectation that is relevant to the task, I like to include it in the task. So in this case, I would click on the first task and I would say always use cold filtered water, and I will indent that, and then I'll hit save. And that's all there is to writing a process. Now let's say that this was the process for making coffee in the coffee machine, but I had a fancy Nespresso coffee machine in the executive office. And that was a completely different work plan. Well, it still falls into the process called making coffee, but now we've got another work plan, and this is when you would want to put a specific objective for a work plan. If you'll remember a moment ago when I was just writing my first work plan, I chose not to bother because the objective was already part of the process. But in this instance, I now have two work plans and I would like to differentiate them. So I'm going to put a little sentence in here which is going to differentiate the one work plan from the second work plan. I might even include a note that there's a detailed instruction booklet included as an uploaded file. So I could actually upload a PDF file of the Nespresso machine's instruction manual to this process. And so now I'm going to create work plan. And because I want to indicate and differentiate this work plan, I'm going to change this work plan title from making coffee to making coffee. Maybe this is the kitchen machine. And I'm going to put an objective in here. So maybe I write an objective that describes what this work plan is to be used for. This is the work plan that explains how to make coffee using the coffee machine in the main kitchen area. And so now I could come in here and I could write the work plan for the Nespresso machine. I could say add task, add task, add task, and then when I'm ready I could upload the manual. That's it. Thank you.